is Joe Mantegna, and you're listening to Mike Tomano's Wild and Free.
Joe Mantegna is internationally known as one of Hollywood's great actors. He also enters millions of homes each week on Criminal Minds. Of course, he's the voice of Fat Tony on The Simpsons, and now Graham in the new Cars 2. Joe also is bringing his love of guns and gun history to the new Outdoor Channel show Gun Stories. Joe, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks very much. Great to be here, Mike.
You know, we are both Chicagoans, and I know recently you had a street named in Cicero, Illinois, after you, didn't you?
I did indeed, just a few weeks ago. In front of my old high school, Morton East High School in Cicero, they renamed a portion of Austin Boulevard Honorary Joe Mantegna Boulevard. So it's quite an honor, and something I never expected when I was a freshman, let's put it that way.
That's right. You got the Hollywood Walk of Fame star, and now you've got the street named after you in Cicero.
Right.
So you went to Morton. I went to St. Rita. I grew up by Midway Airport, so we were neighbors.
Sure, I know right where you. Yeah.
Great places to eat in Cicero. I used to work at Archer's Choice. Do you remember that place?
I remember. I remember that name, and I also remember near Midway there was a place called El Bianco's.
Oh yeah.
Which was a very good Italian restaurant.
Oh yeah, the best. And you had Luciano's was in Cicero, right?
Yeah, Al's was there. And, yeah. Well, actually, we own a restaurant here in Burbank, California, now called Taste Chicago.
Yeah.
Which is our homage to all the great, kind of places we ate in Chicago, my wife and I, and so we've had that for about 8 years now here in Burbank, California.
I know you had to open it there, right? Because you're probably like, where's? I can't get good food anywhere.
Exactly. We're going to get an Italian beef sandwich and a deep dish pizza,
Right. Well, that's perfect. So you've got a lot of things going on. How did your love of guns develop?
Well, it developed actually in Chicago. If you recall, they had they had a gun club right on Lake Michigan there, where they used to shoot trap and skeet, and it was this beautiful old gun club built, I think, back in pre-war, like in the 30s, and it was I'd ride by there on a bike path on my bicycle when I was about 19, and I'd watch them shoot because it just was so picturesque and just something very civilized and very kind of. Just wonderful about watching these men and women, shoot clay birds over the lake. And one day, one of the guys shooting saw me and just said, "Well, are you just going to watch, or are you going to shoot ever?" And I said, "Well, I've never shot a gun in my life." Next thing I know, he was the president of the club, invites me in, buys me 2 rounds of skeet, and I was hooked from that moment on. And so it was really the best possible way to be introduced to the shooting sports by someone who, knowledgeable and professional in terms of professional person. I mean, I think the guy was a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. I mean, it was showing you right away that the shooting sports can be done at a level that a lot of people have a misconception about and think that it's just for good old boys, that from the back of a pickup truck or some crazy notion like that.
Right. It was sophisticated. I remember going fishing with my father down at the lake and driving down Lakeshore Drive and seeing that, and I dreamt of skeet shooting myself. Yeah. Yeah.
So it was great, and from that moment on, I just really took to every aspect of the shooting sports. Learned about it. Studied it, became friends with some of the people in my business, like Robert Stack became a good friend of mine, who was, of course, a world-class clay bird shooter.
Yeah.
As well as being, Elliot Ness in the old Untouchable series.
Joe Mantegna with us. Now, are you an outdoorsman as well?
Well, I've done, I growing up, I think, in an urban environment so much as I did in Chicago, always lived in apartments, never lived in a house, just because of the nature of my family. I didn't have much exposure to that. So I never grew up in a hunting environment or anything like that. But later on, I was able to experience it. But I did it. For American Sportsman, I went out and did a pheasant hunt, which I enjoyed very much. But it just wasn't. I think it was almost like too late for me. I realized, well, I still enjoy doing like I really got so hooked in the sporting clay and skeet and trap that really became my thing. But I did, obtained a hunting license. And learned a lot from that. If that was really the most important thing about getting a hunting license, because what helps you understand is how, when it's done at that level, you realize that hunters are your greatest conservationists. And I think, again, that was, to me, it was like exploding a misconception that a lot of people go into, thinking, well, if you're a hunter, you must hate animals.
Right.
And what you learn is it's the exact opposite.
The absolute opposite.
But some people just don't understand that hunters, they're out there to perpetuate the species of what they hunt. And so because of hunters and because of hunting as part of our culture, that's why we still have ducks and geese and deer and all this. But these are things that you come with age and with knowledge and from education and all that stuff. So I have appreciation for all that. But I certainly love the outdoors, and I don't like to shoot indoors. I shoot outdoors all the time. But I leave the hunting to the hunters.
All right. Well, I'm going to take you hunting next time you're in Chicago. I'd love to take you on a pheasant hunt or something.
Great.
You're an anomaly in Hollywood as a Second Amendment supporter. Do you ever feel backlash, or have you ever found yourself in heated debate?
At this point in my career and my life, I don't even. My attitude is what you see is what you get. I put it out there, and my feeling is, look, at this point, I've never been shy about letting people know what my feelings are. But what I do try to stress is I never make it political, and I think that's what's important. I've always been very affirmative in my stance that this is not about politics. First of all, I'm an independent. I have been my whole life. I don't want people to judge my politics by how I feel about certain issues, because I think that's where we run into problems. In other words, if you think because so-and-so supports this, therefore he thinks everything about this, this direction or not. And that's wrong. I mean, you can support the Second Amendment and still feel different about other issues and stuff like that. And that's what's great about our country. That's what's great about a democracy.
Right.
So what I tend to do is I'll go out there and say, sometimes people are surprised because they'll hear me talking about other topics and realize, oh, well, God, he feels pretty, he feels he's just like me on these issues. And then all of a sudden we'll get into the thing about the Second Amendment, and they'll see where my stance is on that, and they'll realize, whoa, how did you come up with that? And then I'll explain it to them. And very often I'm able to kind of, what really helps is if you take somebody out shooting. Look, before we get into this argument, have you ever shot a gun before? And most of the time when someone's very opposed to it, they'll say no. And I'll say, would you do me the pleasure of just going once with me out to like a range and shooting? And they'll say, okay, that's fair enough. And I swear, 99 out of 100 times you do that, and within the first half an hour, as soon as they break something, they're hooked. And they realize, oh my God, I didn't realize it was, it's not as scary. They realize the gun's not going to jump out of their hands and turn around and start shooting people.
Right.
I mean, that's not what it's about. That's not, you have to get past that. And so I would say, people are going to draw their own opinions about things, and it's fine. Again, that's why we have a democracy. But I'm not going to hide my passion for the things I like to do. I like to play golf too. I like Italian food. I like a lot of different things.
Right. Well, Midway USA is the main sponsor of Gun Stories with Joe Mantegna, and they have to be a great company to work with.
Yeah, I mean, it's been very supportive. We've been able to really make the show we wanted to make, which I think people will see is really beautifully done. We're trying to really raise the level of these kinds of shows to show that with the 21st century technology and all those things in terms of photography and just effects and all that we can make an entertaining, educational, informative kind of outdoor show about the historical firearms that will appeal to people who are watching it for the first time and to people who have a real avid interest in historical firearms. So for me, it's just been a real treat. I mean, we've shot in places such as the Buffalo Bill Museum in Cody, Wyoming.
Wow.
We've shot at the NRA Museum in outside Washington and Virginia. We've shot at this place, ISS in California, where they supply many of the firearms you see in TV and movies. So it's very interesting. In other words, when people see the show, they're going to see places and things and learn things that they may never have known before and will find very interesting.
Yeah, and with such a vast topic, the possibility for episodes must be endless. And with the new show on Outdoor Channel hosted by Joe Mantegna, it's called Gun Stories. You guys are going from the classics all the way to modern age, cutting edge, state of the art stuff. Yeah, well, I mean, the only criteria is that it has had some historical impact on the world in many cases, and that covers a huge waterfront. I mean, we had to just pick 12 initially for this first season, and it was difficult because we know as soon as the show comes out, we're going to be getting letters and emails from people saying, "Hey, what about the?" And we'll get to them. We'll get to them. But I mean,
this first season, you can imagine we devote a whole show, obviously, to the Colt 1911. We devote a show that we go everywhere from the 1894 Winchester to a Glock. So I mean, it covers the waterfront both in terms of military weapons, great guns of the West, foreign, domestic, and we get into the history of them and little anecdotes about them. So eventually, if the show continues, which we all hope it will, that we'll be able to cover the many firearms out there throughout history that have had an impact on not just on the shooting sports or on shooting, but on culture and even on our way of life. I mean, some guns, when you think about it, have changed the world.
Yeah.
I mean, in essence, it's the difference between a war being won, which changes the political landscape of the planet.
Well, now, when you pick these guns, do you have any favorite guns that you have to make sure get covered eventually on the show?
Well, we've been lucky that our first show. I'm not positive that's the first one that airs, but one of the first shows we did was about the 1911 Colt, and that to me was, to this day, well, even if you watch my TV series, that's what I carry on the show,
right?
Because it was my choice, because I said this guy's old school, and he's going to want a government model, Model 70
right.
Government model on his side. This is what he's going to want to carry, and that's the way I was as a shooter as well. I used to compete somewhat in the practical pistol shooting back in the 70s, and I have a fondness for the 45 ACP. So that there's an example of something that I had really a connection to in terms of I was glad that was obviously one of our highlight shows.
Now, you're hosting the Outdoor Channel's Gun Stories, Criminal Minds, Gremlins, or you're Gremlin in the new Cars 2 movie.
Right.
How do you juggle this kind of a career? What's some advice you have for people who want to get started in the arts?
Well, just take, if you have to think of it as a long roller coaster ride, and you have to enjoy the ride and don't worry about where it ends. In other words, I've been very lucky. I mean, I've been doing this for professionally now over 40 years, and it wasn't always, peaches and cream. It wasn't always success. It was the first 15 years of it. I was a struggling actor, but I enjoyed it. In other words, I always enjoyed the ride, and so it didn't matter if I mean, in other words, I was going to stay on that ride regardless of how it was going to end. And it could have very easily been, look, for every actor that has the degree of success I've had, there are, thousands who don't. It's kind of like sports. There's how many could play in the majors. I got lucky. I play in the majors. I made it to the big time. But if you enjoy the endeavor, meaning, the show business, just like an athlete, if you enjoy the sport, you're going to pursue it, and you're going to pursue it regardless of what the outcome is. I mean, and the good thing about our business is, unlike sports, which tends to you put a clock on you, in other words, your body sometimes gives out and you have no choice once you reach a certain point. Here, George Burns worked till he was 100. So
right.
As long as you enjoy it, just keep at it, and as I say, enjoy the journey. Don't worry about the destination, because it's all about the ride. And for me, the ride's been beautiful.
Joe Mantegna with us, the new show on Outdoor Channel, Gun Stories premieres, and you can go to joemantegna.com to keep up on the fascinating career of this man. Thanks so much for taking time with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.